Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to what is the fourth in the ASAP series of webinars for you ASAP members. Delighted to welcome this afternoon Danica Smith, who is the product specialist at ReviewPro, and Neil Halliday, who's the UK and Ireland sales director. This afternoon, we're going to talk about the guest experience in the new world, the current landscape, online reputation, and how to maximize in this quiet time. So, Danica, can I introduce you and hand over to you?
Hi, James. Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for having us this afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can all see my screen okay. So thank you for taking your time to join the webinar, and James and to the ASAP team, thanks for having Neil and I here today. I really wish it was under better circumstances, and so sad that we're missing the event this spring, and it's always better to meet face to face. And to be honest, I think like everybody dialing in, still in shock that we're kind of still faced with this surreal and unprecedented difficult times that's hit our industry to its core. So today, what we want to do is just really share best practices. For those of you that don't know us at ReviewPro, we work with a number of accommodation providers all over the world. And we've been talking closely with our clients to see what's going on in their markets, the good, the bad, the ugly. So we thought we wanted to share that with our partners and the ASAP members today. So I've got a presentation. There'll be time for questions and answers at the end, but please feel free, guys, to use the Q&A function within Zoom if you've got any immediate questions, and I can maybe answer them as I go along, or we can tackle them at the end. So what I thought would be a good starting point is to really set the scene. For those of you that don't know, obviously we've been partners with ASAP for, I think, two years now, maybe a bit longer. And we have the majority of your profiles loaded into our online reputation platform, which means we can look at all of your data across 145 different review sites. And this is what we can see. So this is looking at 1,360 properties within the ASAP account. And we've used the date range from the 1st of March 2020 to the end of April 2020. And it's comparing against the same time last year, the same period. And I'm sure this is no surprise to a number of you, but review volume has completely fallen off the charts. Now, I know as apartments, a number of the members, ASAP members, are still open and housing key workers and frontline staff, which is amazing. But I think the majority are probably closed doors over the last 4 weeks and for the foreseeable future, unfortunately. And this is totally reflecting in the review data that we can see. And actually, review volume has decreased almost 74% year on year. Jane, will you be sending the presentations? I don't need to make notes. Yes, Jane, we will be sending the presentations. You don't need to make notes. Okay, so let's have a look at this in a little bit more detail. I'm just going to close this. So this is a snapshot of those 1,360 properties, looking at what's happening across the main metrics of online reputation. So again, looking at the same period last year, we can see some slight changes. Obviously, review volume, almost 20,000 less reviews than there was last year. Now, we all know how important review volume is and the impact that has on our online reputation and our ranking positions. I'm going to talk about this later on. What's also interesting to see is it's had a negative impact on the global review index. Now, the GRI at ReviewPro is a benchmark score that we have for reputation. So what we do is we track all of those 174 different sources, Booking.com, Expedia, TripAdvisor, Ctrip in Germany and China, and we combine them in an algorithm that produces the GRI. So we can see that the GRI has decreased 1.4% year on year. And to be honest, that the majority of that is because of the review volume. Now, if we look at the review volume by source, this is a snapshot looking at the top 5 sources of review distribution for those properties. And we can see Booking.com has had a decrease of 71% year on year. Google 73.5 and TripAdvisor 76.8. Something that I want to highlight for you guys, in case you haven't realized, I'm sure you've seen already, Google. For those of you that have heard Neil or myself talk at previous ASAP events, we've always been talking about the rise of Google reviews and how interesting the change between Booking.com, Google and TripAdvisor is, and the entwining relationships that the three giants have. And we've always said, we never know what's around the corner. And actually, since COVID-19, Google have stopped producing reviews for guests. So you will notice that you are no longer A, receiving Google reviews, and B, able to respond to reviews. Now, we spoke to our partners at Google, and this is just a short-term, not solution, I guess, effects caused from COVID-19. So hopefully Google will open up to guests and allow reviews again. But you can see, a decrease of 73%. And this is, remember, looking at data from the 1st of March. If we look at April in isolation and the last week in May, it's 100% obviously with Google. So keep in mind, guys, what your own review distribution looks like at your properties. Now, some positive news. What was interesting, that whilst the GRI across those 1,300 properties have decreased across the board, what we're seeing is the distribution between positive, neutral and negative has really changed. There's a lot more negative reviews coming in and a lot more positive reviews. So that means that really guests are a lot more polarized in today's world than what they were this time last year. So where there's been a positive stay, they really have emphasized that online, but then the negatives have really been significant for them. So that was a quick kind of intro into what's happening at an aggregated level. And remember, guys, to reach out to Neil or myself if you would like to find out about your individual properties. But let's have a look at what some of the reviews are saying with regards to COVID-19 and coronavirus. So when this all started at ReviewPro, we have semantic mentions, which enables us to track all of the mentions, and we put positive and negative sentiments against. So in a lot of our clients in APAC, obviously the situation hit earlier for them. So we've created a category of coronavirus, and we track everything to do with coronavirus and all mentions associated with coronavirus or COVID-19. And these are some really great reviews that have come through. And I must say, guys, I was super proud of ASAP across the board, because the majority of the mentions of coronavirus have been in a really positive way. There was lots of mentions of guests really thanking the staff for their professionalism during this difficult time. And a lot of the negative mentions were more about the fact that their booking got cancelled or their holiday got cancelled. So I think that's a congratulations and a well done, because I think you and your properties have been dealing with this crisis incredibly well, and that's been reflected in the reviews. So what I wanted to highlight here, and you can see on the screen, is a number of reviews that really emphasize how important cleanliness is during this time. So we've got a review at a Seiko property in Bath, and the guest has said, "A lovely clean apartment provided an excellent base for us to have a change of scenery whilst trying social distancing during coronavirus." Berkshire Rooms, a guest said that, certain members of the staff had gone above and beyond to keep her and her family safe during the coronavirus. So we see the same themes coming up, social distancing, cleanliness and safety is really resonating with guests in a positive way. Another Seiko property, the Canon, here they're saying that the team went above and beyond to really implement procedures to safeguard the guests. So I know you've all been talking about it, and I know ASAP have got some great initiatives with the housekeeping protocols, but it's not just as an industry that we need to make sure we're looking at those protocols, but it's also from the guests. Guests are looking to this and want this. And also another great review talking about how important cleanliness is during COVID-19. Unfortunately, wherever there is the good, there's the bad. So I didn't want to name and shame the properties today, so I've anonymized the properties. But unfortunately, there were a few negative mentions of how certain properties have dealt with this. One was saying, the coronavirus is just beginning to appear, so hygiene should have been a priority. Now, guys, for any of you in your online reputation that have one or two negative mentions of cleanliness, that is no longer acceptable in May 2020, whether you are a 2-star property or a 5-star property. Every accommodation provider has to make sure that their safety, the hygiene and the cleanliness of their staff and their guests is at the utmost at all times. And also here we can see, unfortunately, another negative review talking about the reception staff and how they've treated the guests. So it's so crucial that your staff, your frontline staff, really are empathetic and are professional and really put their guests first, now more than ever. Now, the third review I just wanted to highlight, because remember, guys, if you're getting a 70% review volume across all of your main review sources, every single review that gets posted online across any website is worth its weight in gold, now more than ever. So you cannot afford to have a negative review talking about cleanliness or talking about how the staff has not, has let themselves down with regard into this epidemic. Because that review, pre-COVID-19 might have got pushed down by fresh reviews coming in that week. But now if you've only got 10 reviews being posted a week, or in some cases a month, that review is going to be present #1 review on TripAdvisor for a number of visibilities. So we cannot afford to have negative reviews. And the third review here is talking about an event at one of the ASAP properties, members properties, and it was cancelled, which obviously if your property is shut, it's going to be cancelled. And to be fair, I think this is an unfair review. But what is so terrible is that this guest on Google left a review saying that, unfortunately, the way that it was cancelled and the way that the staff was dealt with, they lack empathy. And they go on to say that they would actually recommend this property's competitors. Ouch. Yeah, you cannot afford to have a negative review mentioning your competitors down the road. So really, guys, think about your reviews, and we'll talk about this later on. So that's kind of an overview of what's happening in online reputation at the moment. Now, a lot of our clients that we've been talking to are closed doors. A number of my colleagues and friends from the industry are furloughed or reduced hours. And it's really fascinating to see how different people are using that time differently. And I've been very inspired by a number of different industry leaders and people in the industry of what they're doing with their time. So by talking to different clients and my LinkedIn, we've kind of put together a list of how you can really maximize this downtime in a productive way to make sure you're ready for opening doors, or hopefully even to get up to the right occupancy levels. I was talking to a hotel in Shanghai, and they opened in mid-March. They reopened, and they opened at 5% occupancy. And the general manager said, Danica, never in my career have I ever had, and they're #1 on TripAdvisor in Shanghai, never have I ever had 5% occupancy. But the positive news was a May bank holiday last weekend. There was a bank holiday. They were forecasting and they had 50% occupancy business on the books, which is great to see that trend happening in APAC, and hopefully that's going to follow through to Europe and the UK. So now really is the time to make sure we're ready for opening our doors. So the first thing is to really understand your management response strategy. Now, you've probably heard Neil and I talk about this a number of different times, so we're not going to go into the details of what is a successful management response strategy. It's more just pointers for you to really think about. Okay, so let's just see here. Have I got any questions so far? No. So make sure you've got the right workflows and processes in place post-COVID-19. In the past, you might have had, a certain member of team dealing with all of your reviews. Well, now maybe you want to have different people responding to different reviews. So it might be the general manager responds to all negative reviews that mention coronavirus, because that management response needs a more serious tone to it, perhaps. What about your surveys? How are you going to be responding to your different surveys? What about in-stay surveys? What about the KPIs that have been set? If you've had KPIs, a lot of our clients had to respond to 100% negative reviews within 24 hours. Maybe post-COVID-19, those KPIs are no longer applicable to your business. Do you need to change them? What about your time deadlines? Now that you've got a lot less reviews coming in, perhaps now you can achieve that KPI of responding to all reviews within 24 hours. That's a lot more achievable now with the lower review volumes. The other thing with regards to your management response strategy is to really think about how can you steal market share with your response. Now, we know we already operate in an extremely competitive environment. And unfortunately, post-COVID-19, competition has just jumped tenfold, especially if we're only running at 30% occupancy. So really think about, in your responses, how can you go above and beyond and really shout about your property? Maybe you really want to shout about your cleanliness protocols that you've implemented, or talk about, certain elements of your product, whether that might be in-room technology or self-service catering. So really think about your management response as a way of emphasizing the USPs and the greatness of your product or your brand. And that's where templates can really come and support you. A lot of our clients have templates, but some of them have never had the time to actually sit down and think about a management response template in a strategic way. Well, now hopefully some of you will have the time to do that. So we really advise, with regards to online reputation, not to use templates. We're human beings. As a guest, we can see through that. But certainly have sentence samples to support management response. So you might want to create a COVID-19 response template. Every time somebody mentions COVID-19 in a positive way and says the staff were so professional and really looked after us, well, that response template might include, well, thank you, we've gone above and beyond to train our staff because we know the utmost importance of this. And then equally, templates for your survey responses, positive templates, negative templates. You might want to have, let's say your property opens, but there's certain elements of your property that remain closed, like the swimming pool or the gym. You might get a lot of negative complaints about that. So again, templates can really help support that process. And then finally, make sure, the majority of your reviews will be coming from Booking.com and Google and TripAdvisor. And with ReviewPro, you can obviously respond directly through the platform. So make sure you've got those APIs set up free of charge as well. So, these are the kind of housekeepings, guys, that we want to make sure now that we have time to breathe, we can make sure we tick those boxes. So let's have a look at our workflows and processes. I don't know, and it would be great to hear from you guys in the Q&As, what kind of staffing levels you plan to open, and how you open. I mean, we work with 60,000 properties, and it's unbelievable the different strategies. We have some clients in the UK that have decided not to open until October because they actually want the other accommodation providers to open, and they're going to watch what happens, what failures, what do the guests want, and then delay their opening to make sure that they've got everything correct. We've got other clients that are already opening now on, at 10% occupancy. They're changing their product to ensure social distancing. So whatever you open, we have some clients that are, we did a hotel talk for the industry, and really fascinating. It was all about cleanliness, hygiene, and safety protocols. And the question was, do you plan to increase your housekeeping staff? And I think it was like 60% of the listeners said yes, they would. So on one hand, we have a whole bunch of clients that plan to open at a very streamlined, minimal staff level. And we have other clients that plan to, really engage more staff and hire more housekeeping staff. So, every apartment and every hostel and every hotel is completely different. But what is important for your business is that you understand your workflows and your processes. So you need to make sure that whether you're running at 20% staff levels or 100%, everybody needs to understand what is their role. You might have a receptionist that's now in charge of a little bit of housekeeping as well. So what workflows and processes do you need to make sure that they can do that task effectively? So we have work groups, and this isn't just applicable to ReviewPro. You can do this within your own business, but make sure that you group your departments and your staff to make sure that they have the right reports being sent to them. They have separate training. If I'm a revenue manager at your hotel, at your apartment, yes, I might need to understand some basic cleanliness and hygiene protocols, but it's going to be completely different if I'm on the front line at your apartment. So understand the workflows and processes. How does that impact the training of the staff? What do you need to do to make sure your internal service standards are being met? And do you need to have deadlines and escalations on guest requests and guest issues? Remember, we need to do everything we can to safeguard the guest experience, because we cannot afford to have any negative reviews. So you really need to make sure you've got everything in place and you've got the right foundations to meet those guest expectations pre, during, and post-stay. And also for the future, so many of you are thinking about messaging and chatbots, and, you can't do that unless you've got the right foundations in place. So you need to be confident that you can handle in-stay communication and handle those requests. The other side of the coin is the marketing side, from the guest perspective. And it's really important to make sure that your messaging is aligned. Number one tip of the day, carry out some housekeeping on your OTA profiles. So many people haven't updated their TripAdvisor listings or their Booking.com listings. So really make sure all of your basic information is correct, your images are correct, your address. I was talking to a client and their address was incorrect. So please, we can't afford to have those silly mistakes anymore. We have to claw our way for revenue and bookings. Listen to guest feedback to ensure you're meeting their demands and their needs post-COVID-19. So here's a review left on Booking.com, and this guest goes on to talk about how great Netflix was. Now, perhaps pre-COVID-19, your in-room technology wasn't that much of a benefit to a guest, but post-COVID-19 it is. So again, think about your messaging, your positioning. We have clients that are talking about, how spacious their apartments are now more than ever, to ensure social distancing, or if you have really flexible F&B offering, or you have self-catering and you have the best kitchen equipment, that's going to be really important as a guest benefit and a guest need. So make sure you're positioning your product and brand accordingly. And then also, how are you going to market and communicate this? We've seen already from the reviews that guests are expecting cleanliness, hygiene, safety protocols to be here. There's a number of initiatives like ASAP's housekeeping protocol that are in place. That's great, but how are we going to communicate this to the guests, and how are we going to shout about it? Something that we all need to really think about. And then also know your competition. So what we've always seen is that during the difficulties and despair, often innovation and creativity and greatness comes to play. So this is a property in Amsterdam, and this is their wonderful, amazing idea of social distancing in order to open their restaurant. Can you afford for your competitor down the road to launch a great, creative, fun initiative like this? I mean, this property in Amsterdam has been picked up by press, both in the industry and outside of the industry around the world. So really understand your competition and know what are they doing, what initiatives are they launching, and really understand their strengths and weaknesses. And make sure that you're one step ahead And now more than ever is the time to be agile. If you have a great idea, just go with it. I'm going to try and remember this quote. Tim, one of my colleagues, the founder of ReviewPro, says it. So good is the, what is it? It's basically saying that good is the downfall of perfection. And what I mean by that is if you have a great idea like this, for example, and you try and get it perfect, and you want to have the right landing page, and you want to launch a PR campaign around it, and you want to get the right marketing and the right branding and the right images and operationally, and you delay this idea, it's too late. So we really need to be agile and reactive in today's world. And then finally, another thing that we can do with regards to being proactive is there's such great educational resources and webinars like today that are really meaningful. This isn't a plug for ReviewPro. Honestly, this is on May the 26th. We've got a fantastic webinar, and it's all about how to meet expectations of tomorrow's guests. So I really urge you to just sign up and listen to it. It's all about the new traveler's mindset and what do we have to do in our properties to meet that in a post-COVID-19 world. So let's have a look at the new guest. And this is an image, a real image of a property in Spain, of a drawing of how this property plans to reopen post-COVID-19. Bit of a mess, and you're probably all doing the same on serviettes around dinner. I was about to say at the bar, but we're not allowed in the bars. So it's really important that our property, when we open and we're ready to welcome the new guests, meets their expectations. You know, there's new needs for privacy, for cleanliness protocols, for different technology, for hygiene and social distancing. And that's why, you know, like ASAP's housekeeping protocol project is going to be key. It's such a minefield trying to understand the legal requirements in your local market or your nationality. You know, Portugal are doing some fantastic things. In the UK, there's not much being said. So it's really difficult to know what is an essential to open in. And it's important that we understand from the guest perspective what's essential for them. You know, what does the new guest look like? So I've touched on this a little bit, guys, but I can't emphasize it enough. We really need to get into their mindset and understand what are their changes in the guest experience and their expectations now. What preferences do guests have now? I mean, and you can just talk to your friends and family and you'll see changes already. My mum and dad, 60 and 65, have been traveling. You know, they're retired. They live a fantastic life, travel all the time, completely changed. My dad does not want to fly anywhere. So whilst they were meant to do a trip around New York and South America next year, they're now looking at driving to France, Spain, and Italy. You know, so what preferences do you need to do to change, you know, to meet your guest preferences? Like I said, what are the legal requirements you need to do? The other challenge that we've seen for our clients that have international guests is my property might be in London and I might have a Portuguese guest that's coming to stay with me. And in Portugal, they have very strict protocols and legal requirements. So those guest expectations might be up here with regards to cleanliness, health and safety. And then when they come to my property, I'm not meeting them. So this is going to be a real challenge for the industry and meeting the different guest expectations. We also need to look at how we can switch to match those customer perceptions. And honestly, as apartments, you couldn't be in a better situation in terms of your product offering. You have such market strengths versus hotels. The fact that you have your own kitchens, you're self-sufficient, you naturally promote social distancing. So really think about emphasizing that. On that point though, we have had some very interesting conversations with clients from the hotel and the hostel world who are actually looking to remodel and reposition as apartments. So bear in mind, guys, that your traditional competitors may have just, doubled overnight post-COVID. The other thing that's really interesting to think about is your destination marketing. Let's say you're a London apartment and you are right next to Westminster, and you, from a tourism point of view and leisure, attracting leisure guests, You've always spoke about how great your attraction is, you know, your property is right next door to Big Ben. Well, now as a tourist, maybe I don't want to go to Big Ben. Maybe I do not want to be surrounded by thousands of people in a small space. Maybe you need to talk about how close you are to Hyde Park, for example. Or instead of talking about your location near the tube or the train, you want to emphasize that there's lots of Boris bikes near you. So really think about this concept of destination marketing and how can you meet those new guest needs. And with that, understanding the shift of consumption amongst guests. You know, the conversation of booking, I mean, I think flexible rates and cancellation rates are the only way forward. I don't see how, you know, you're going to get certainly leisure guests and business on the books any other ways. Also the stay trends. I mean, my dad said that when he is going to travel, he's going to make sure he travels for a week and not just a few days. So I think hopefully that's going to be positive for the industry, that we're going to see longer length of stays really take place. And then we look at the corporate versus leisure travel. A lot of us, you know, rely on corporate business. You know, how are we going to ensure corporate business is there and meet, you know, the corporate safety concerns and protocols in place to be able to give the confidence and security that my property has that stamp of approval to, you know, to accommodate your corporate guests. And equally, domestic versus international. I was talking to a property in the south of France whose 80% of their guests were always international, coming from England, Spain, and Italy. And now COVID-19, with the travel ban, especially in France, they've had to look at the domestic market and the challenges there in terms of changing your marketing to the domestic market. So we need to think about, you know, the new guests and how do we change our product offering? How do we change our marketing or our communication and positioning to meet those new demands? So one of the themes that is so apparent that keeps coming up on the webinars that I've been on and the talks and talking to our clients is how important it is to have very clear and concise communication, both to our staff and to our guests. We really need to make sure that either as a brand or as an independent property, I am trustworthy and transparent with regards to COVID-19, whether that's the bookings and the cancellation policies or whether that's with cleanliness and the protocols there. We need to communicate what we're doing. Like I said, we need to be transparent and flexible with booking policies. If I only am going to have a fixed rate, I really need to make that incredibly clear to the guests when booking. You know, what about if I have less staff? How's that going to impact the less languages that I have, especially when we operate in international markets? What am I going to do if I've got less staff and therefore less resource and less time to still meet and exceed guest expectations? You know, looking for alternative revenue streams as well is going to be key to us as a business. And this is what I love about our industry. We're so creative and so innovative. We have clients that are opening up, you know, for day use, for free Wi-Fi as an office space. You know, looking at your spa, you know, now, you know, incremental in-stay room revenue is going to be critical and crucial. So, you know, what are you going to do to drive your spa business or your meetings and events business or your F&B? What about technology? We're going to talk about technology, but how can technology help support the new guests and the new processes? So it's all about, you know, the world of accommodation has changed and, you know, so what are the guests looking for? Now, we were on this bandwagon at ReviewPro before COVID-19, and now it's even more applicable. Guests want touchless communication. And in fact, there is a saying of, we move from high touch to no touch hospitality. And that's really where AI and automation and technology can come into play. So here are some stats here about, you know, and now more than ever, 45% of customers really don't care if they are served by a human or a robot, as long as they are served quickly. There has been some terrible brands in the press that have been hit hard for having 8-hour, you know, delays in their reservation centers. That's not acceptable anymore when there's technology that can support that. So guests want to communicate in new ways. So we really need to harness technology and the power of mobile to do that. You know, it's flexible, it's accessible, and it's convenient for guests, both in terms of in-stay and pre-stay. You know, just with regards to the room, I personally am no longer going to touch the TV remote control or the TV or the room phone for a while. Or I'll bring my own, you know, like Naomi Campbell when she flies, I'll bring my own wipes to make sure that it is clean. So we need to think about moving into a mobile-centric service offering, you know, and how can we provide a seamless journey for guests from pre-stay to bookings, you know, to in-stay to post-stay. And not just for guests, also for staff. Who knows what the regulations and the government legal requirements might be with regards to opening properties. You know, maybe my staff have to have social distancing, so I can no longer afford for my receptionist to run up to my concierge with a post-it note. Maybe I need to have some sort of case management and mobile phones to enable that. So it's really about going beyond convenience and meeting the demands of the guests post-COVID-19. So we wanted to share some interesting statistics. This is from the US, but I think it's applicable worldwide. And it looks at the time period of customer services across accommodation providers, hotels, hostels, and service apartments. And it's no surprise that 54% were outside office hours. And by that, we actually mean between 6 p.m. and 12 a.m. That's when you're getting the most amount of guest requests coming through. Can you resource that? And equally on the savings, here we can see in terms of call centers, we can see that actually a self-service chatbot on your website is the most cost efficient compared to having a call center module. So, I mean, AI is, the possibilities are really endless in our industry. It's unbelievable how as an industry we can open up to have AI support, whether that's on the revenue management or whether that's food wastage or whether that's the guest experience. So what we're doing is today I just wanted to talk about quickly how AI can help your properties. And we wanted to share some information with you and some research that we found with our own clients. So first of all, information drives the guest journey. There's not many industries out there where information is so consistent throughout my stay. So from a reservations point of view, you know, if I don't get the information I need, I'm not going to book your property. How far are you to Heathrow Airport? Do you have a spa? You know, if you don't tell me, I'll find another apartment that does and book them. So it's really important we deliver that information. That's such a challenge for accommodation provider. You know, so many people struggle to have frequently asked questions, check in, check out, how far is the airport? You know, to have that centrally recorded in a correct way, you'll be surprised that some of the biggest brands with the biggest budgets still can't get that admin process correct. And that's predominantly because of our industry has such high staff turnover. So this is really impacting, you know, the guest need for information and accommodation providers being able to meet that. We've spoke to a number of our clients and we carried out some research at their reservation centre, and it was amazing. I couldn't believe this stat, but looking at a chain of 31 properties, 63% of all of their incoming emails, calls and messages were the same 8 questions. So they derived from the same 8 questions. What time's check-in? Am I allowed a dog? How far is the airport? Is breakfast included in my rate? So if you think about it, guys, your reservations team or your reception team are being clogged up with this noise. And that's direct. It's the same with the OTAs. Across our clients, on average, 50% of pre-stay and in-stay requests sent via Booking.com and Expedia were unanswered. Now we know guests are booking a number of properties at once with flexible rates, and then I decide which property I'm going to go with before I make my booking. Now, if I ask what time is check-in and you're the only property that doesn't respond to me, but your competitor does, I'm going to obviously book with them. So we really can't afford to continue with ignoring 50% of pre-stay inquiries. So we need to make sure that we're present in the guest journey across the journey, pre, during, and post. And in today's reality, the only way to do that is with automation. It's no longer scalable to expect your reservations team to answer calls, especially when the majority of them are happening over midnight. You know, we just don't have the resource and the scalability for that. So we need to look to technology in order to support that. And I've just wanted to share some great examples of how some of our clients are doing this. And I know Go Native, I don't know if you're online, it'd be great to hear from you, but I know you've had some real success of using messaging during COVID-19. So this is an example of another client of how messaging has supported them. So this is a guest coming in saying, you know, that they're coming in from Australia, they land on this day, what's the easiest way to get to Heathrow to the property? And they respond. During stay, somebody saying, hey, I'd like to have a cup of cake and tea. They deal with that response. And then post day, somebody saying, hey, I left my sunglasses on my bed when I checked out, how can I get them? This is how you improve the guest experience, and this is how you continue to drive the guest experience, by creating these touch points pre, during, and post stay, and making sure that the information is requested from the guest you can provide and match and meet and respond to straight away. Because unfortunately, if we don't, your competitor probably will be doing it. So at ReviewPro, just finally, I mean, we've always been about the guest experience, and you know, what you need to be doing in your business is looking at guest feedback across reviews, surveys, messaging. You need to be analysing it, understanding it, crunching the data, improving. What do you need to do to change your positioning, to change any issues of the guest experience, reporting. And then really you need to add in this new level of automation and AI to really be able to scale and deal with the post, you know, the post COVID-19 guests, which now is touchless, you know, that high touch to low touch hospitality. I don't want to walk down to reception and ask receptionists what time checkout is. I don't want to pick up your in-room phone and call you, not when I've just had 20,000 deaths of my city. You know, I don't want to do that. What I want to do is contact you on my phone on my terms. And so really, guys, that's the note that I want you to think about in terms of reopening, or your strategy for this year and the remaining of the year is, how are you going to support the new guest? What do you need to do to change? And for us, we really see that needs to be automation. And that's one of the ways in order to continue to drive and improve the guest journey and guest experience. So I appreciate that's probably quite a lot to take in, and I hope we're still okay for time for some more questions. I think we are. So it'd be great if anybody's got any questions. I would love to hear from you. So let's see.
Doesn't look like any questions, Danica.
No, okay, well, thank you very much. I hope that was useful.
And Neil, I think that that those questions that we prepared ourselves for didn't look like they were coming. So hopefully everything's covered. Thank you both very much for your time this afternoon. I think what's really fascinating from what you've covered there, Danica, is the three takeaways that I've got from that, which is trustworthiness, transparency, and cleanliness. We're talking about cleanliness all over the place. Every conversation I have with members, every conversation I have with individuals outside of the association, they're talking and they're asking, what are we doing? What are we doing about assuring the guest that our members' products are a safe place to choose? And of course, you'll all know there's not an opportunity goes by that I don't talk about accreditation, and we are 7 years down the road of accreditation. And accreditation focuses on the health and safety of the guests. And what a better place, as you very kindly sort of touched on through your presentation, what a better opportunity there is for us to weave in a COVID-19 or even a future-proof pandemic cleaning protocol into ISAP's compliance program. So that's what we're going to be doing. That's what we'll be launching over the next few weeks. I'm sorry, there'll be lots of questions coming back. We will write to you during the course of today and tomorrow, so you will get more information on that. But our opportunity here, and be under no illusion that when we start tempting the corporate traveller back to travelling, their very first question when it comes to due diligence and safety responsibility is, what do you do to ensure the safety of our travellers? So seeing
Yeah.
so much of it come through, Danica, is really useful. Thank you very much again.
Yeah. And it's a trend, James, that we're seeing, you know, from clients and the guests. You know, we saw it in the reviews. Guests are expecting that already, and that was in March the 20th. You know, so imagine what it's going to be like when doors open in July or September. So, and I think what's interesting is, from a marketing point of view, how do we make cleanliness and protocols our main communication plan? How do we make that interesting and sexy to the guests? And that's going to be exciting, of what brands can do that creatively. But the most important message is that communication to the guests is essential. To have the protocols in place and then educate and communicate the guests is going to be key.
And our aspiration is, well, it's not an aspiration, it's going to happen, is that we have collaborations with other trade associations around the world. And many of you will know about the umbrella alliance vehicle that we have, which is the Global Alliance of Serviced Accommodation. That will be the vehicle by which we talk about due diligence, safety, housekeeping protocols with the travelling community. So I think, well, as you've suggested, the service departments are in a really strong position to come out of this well. So we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed.
And yeah, if anyone's got any questions that they would like to email us, you know, contact James, Neil, or myself, or if you want to discuss, because I could talk about this topic for hours and hours. So yeah, thanks for having us, James.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And if anyone wants to make contact, on the business partner page of the website, there is very clear links through to ReviewPro, both to Neil and Danica. So feel free to